welcome to the Unprofessionals Podcast. My name is Joshua Sutter, and I am joined, per usual, by Nathan Page to talk some entertainment stuff. We wanted to do a little bit of a shorter podcast just to talk about some recent movie trailers along with a few TV shows. So Nathan, how are you?
I am well.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's start off with TV real quick. And the first part of this is going to be me chastising you about not watching OJ, because I get it. We were both really young when the whole OJ thing happened, and seeing a docudrama or whatever it is about something that has already happened isn't really that appealing. And frankly, the only reason I watched it was because my parents always talk about how unbelievable, and so does most people in their late 40s or whatever, talk about how crazy the OJ thing was when it happened. So I figured, you know what, I'll give it a shot, even though I have no historical context to actually care about this. But I'll just see if it actually reflects, one, how crazy the OJ thing actually was in all reality, but two, I wanted to see if it could be just a solid, entertaining TV show. And I wrote a little bit about this, but I have a hard time writing about TV. Just one, because I haven't done it for that long, so I can't really expound upon how this show did things that I haven't really experienced in TV since Mr. Robot, in that it built up these powerful moments of emotion, and to where my heart was pounding in so many different episodes, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen, whether it was the scene where he tried on the gloves, or the final guilty verdict, or when the dream team or the scheme team or whatever hired on the crazy amount of lawyers that they did. But it was just one of these unbelievable shows that didn't even need any historical context from the viewer, because I didn't know a ton about the show. I'd read a couple pieces about OJ or whatever, and so I knew some stuff about what actually happened. And obviously I had watched some YouTube clips of the Bronco chase, but I enjoyed how it was cast, even though there was obviously some discussion on Travolta and David Schwimmer, but I personally thought they both did a really good job, even though, again, I have no idea how actually Robert Shapiro and Robert Kardashian acted during this whole thing, so I don't know if they did a good portrayal of that. All I know is that I enjoyed David Schwimmer yelling juice a million times, and I enjoyed John Travolta playing Robert Shapiro. So just 10 seconds or whatever, explain to me why you didn't at least record this and watch this later on.
I recorded it, but I never started it. And it's hard for me. I have commitment issues. You can ask Anna. It took me forever to propose. And it takes me forever to get committed to a show. I like what I know, and there's only certain times where you can actually devote attention to a show. So there's times where you're leisurely, you're doing whatever. You're cleaning. We talked about this earlier today. Phil Sims, dang it. I did the Phil Sims thing. But we were talking about there's shows you watch when you're just cleaning up, or when you're doing the dishes, or you're cooking dinner, or whatever. Yeah, I sound like a wife right now. It's because, sometimes I do wife things. Get off me. But anyways, I guess my point is I never wanted to start the show like that. And there have just been other shows that have demanded my attention. I was finishing up Breaking Bad when all this started. I think I was starting season 5 when the show got going. So I had to wrap up Breaking Bad, which the last season of Breaking Bad is phenomenal. And then it's just I took a break, and then I started watching Daredevil season 2, which we're going to talk about. And so I just think, I don't know, it's hard for me to commit to dramas, and once I get in 100%. And so now that it's over, I still haven't heard spoilers, even though I know how it ends. I just know it's a great show, and so I think I needed it to be confirmed that it was a great show. So now that I know that, give it some time, I'll get into it. But it's like I said, I can only do one TV drama at a time, and when I'm in it 100%. And so that's kind of what took me so long. I'm just suck at committing, man.
No, I understand. And that's exactly what happened with Mr. Robot for me last year. I didn't really want to dedicate time to it. And then once people told me about it, I thought, all right, I'll watch the first couple episodes. And then I was hooked. So it'll be definitely the same kind of experience with OJ. So yeah, Daredevil season 2 was released on Netflix, I believe, March 18th. And because we both have, jobs and a life, we can't binge watch Daredevil the first weekend it comes out. So we've both been consuming it slowly. I personally just finished it up, and I think probably about 4 episodes in, you mentioned. So we won't, actually talk a ton about the storyline and spoilers. But what I did really want to talk about, and you texted me about this last night when we were talking a little bit about it, and it creates a different experience than most Marvel movies do. And that's not to say that Marvel movies are bad, because we've also discussed this a little bit a little bit about this in the past, is that shows like The Walking Dead and Marvel movies and Fast and Furious are what they are. They're just going to be a lot of entertainment, and there's not going to be much depth to the different aspects of the show, whether it's character development or story development. And that's totally fine. Like, we're both going to go see Civil War, even though that one is getting like critical acclamation, which doesn't usually happen. But all the Marvel movies, and it's kind of funny, like one of the things you talked about with the second Avengers movie was that weird little outtake into Jeremy Renner's like family life or whatever. And I get it. That was one of the things that it's like, Marvel, we know what to expect from you. Don't do that, right?
Right. Yeah. Just like give us what we know. I don't go to J.R. Smith to run like a pick and roll. I go to J.R. Smith for him to shoot a 3, to do J.R. Smith things. Like, I need 20 shots from you, and I need for you one time in a 7-game series to go for 35. And it's like, Marvel, just stay in your lane. Like, I don't need you to be Chris Paul. I need you to be J.R. Smith. Just give me one thing every now and then, and that's all I need. And they try to do too much.
Exactly. And I think like they're partially self-aware in that environment, and that yes, they messed up that one aspect of the Avengers movie, but when you're in a lane with Chris Evans, one of the Hemsworth brothers, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Robert Downey Jr., like, don't try to give me character depth if they're all just going to fight the whole movie. And I don't think they're going to do that in Civil War. I think they're going to do a better job of introducing another aspect of the Avengers better than the Justice League did of introducing the Justice League. But I think what we talk about staying in your lane is that they took an exit ramp for Daredevil. They took an exit ramp for Jessica Jones. And they're going to do the same thing for Luke Cage, which comes out later this year. And that it's different from even like the ABC shows like Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I like, but it's not for the same reason I like Daredevil. I like those just because it's good TV just to have on if I want superheroes. And even though there's not, there is character depth and it's a very character-based television show, both of those are, it's different from what Daredevil does, in that Daredevil, tries to be, or it doesn't try to be, it does a good job of naturally showing like a gritty side of New York, just like Mr. Robot did. So that's the first aspect that's enjoyable about it, is it doesn't try to make New York City to be this, pompous environment, which when I went there last year was one of the things that I was shocked by. And I think if I had watched Mr. Robot and Daredevil, and this is so stupid that I get my perception of cities from television, but I think if I had been engrossed in Daredevil and Mr. Robot, my perception of New York City wouldn't have been Friends. It would have been 99% of New York City is like, it's gritty, and that's what's great about it. It's the concrete, I guess the Los Angeles is the concrete jungle, but it's literally just like this massive island that's just concrete, or not island. What's it called when there's water on 3 sides? Is it an
peninsula?
Yes. Whatever New York City is geographically. That's why we don't, that's why we're not education majors. But New York City is just this massive, gritty city, and there's so much to appreciate about it. But I didn't know that when I went there. And Daredevil does such a good job of showing the real side of New York City and just its environment. But then as far as character development wise, like Matt Murdock, Foggy, and Karen are both really interesting characters. And then usually when you have one season of a great superhero show, it's really, really hard to follow it up. And that was one thing I was scared about with season 2. But as someone who's finished season 2, I was completely blown away by the fact that a season 2 of a show was actually somehow better than season 1. And like you said with Breaking Bad, season 5 is probably the best out of all the seasons. But in the way we both consumed those, we consumed the entire Breaking Bad series after the fact. So it wasn't like we watched it chronologically in like a season 1, you take a break, season 2. So it's less of a weird experience when a latter season is better than one of the first seasons, because you're not experiencing it chronologically. You're experiencing it as just one massive television show. So this was the first time I can remember in a TV show that I've experienced chronologically to where a great first season is somehow overshadowed by a better second season. Like Mr. Robot obviously has a lot to live up to, but Daredevil somehow overshadowed the first season, and that the second season introduced the Punisher and Elektra, and somehow it didn't overshadow the smallness that it felt between Karen, Foggy, and Matt. Even though there's a little bit less of Foggy in this season, Karen and Matt's relationship and just the way that they interact and the way that Foggy interacts with Matt, all of that somehow wasn't overshadowed by two massive personalities in the Punisher and Elektra coming on. And somehow it created this weird orchestra of violence, relationships, and storyline that was just, it was genuinely one of the best probably the best superhero experience outside of The Dark Knight that I can remember having, and one of the best seasons of TV that I've watched in a while. It's up there with one of the best seasons of TV I've ever seen. And I won't spoil anything, but the way that it pulled at me and like my different emotions was different in the way that most superhero experiences pull at me. Even The Dark Knight, which was unbelievable, but it didn't create the same character development in the way that I cared about the characters' relationships and all that stuff. And it just didn't do the same things that Daredevil season 2 has done. So even though you haven't finished it, what have your impressions been of Daredevil so far?
Well, yeah, all the things you said are true. I don't know. I've loved this season so far. I guess, like you said, I think I'm like 3.5 episodes in, and it's one of those things. Like, it was hard. I watched the first episode and I was like, man, they really have done a great job of creating these characters, because you pick right back up. And I think the thing that you've been talking about is like, you believe that these people are friends. And sometimes with superhero movies, like, you don't buy that. Everyone is just kind of like in it together, and they all have like these perfectly timed, sarcastic, witty one-liners, even in the heat of battle. And this show, like, while there is like, they have moments like that, it's more of, there's like this friendship, there's this bond, there's these guys who work together, Foggy and Matt, who've built something, and you can tell, like, you feel their relationship and how far back it's gone, and like, you believe that it's real, and you believe that Foggy cares about Matt. It's, I don't know, there's something very, like, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be psychological about it, but it feels very human. Like, for a superhero show, it feels real. Like, Matt bleeds, Matt has broken bones, like, Matt is real. And I think they spend a lot of time proving that to you, and I think that's what's so enjoyable. And the scene that got me hooked on this, and not just because like it's an epic fight scene, but the Punisher and Matt have had this exchange on the roof, and then there's this biker gang like storming into this probably 10-story building to come to the roof to kill these guys because the Punisher blew up their bikes, whatever. I don't want to spoil too much. It's not really that important as a scene. But the way that Daredevil Matt takes out everybody, and this still camera fluid one shot all the way through as he goes through this entire biker gang down 10 stories or so. And the whole time, like, limping, he's got a gun taped to his hand, he's got a chain on the other hand, and he's just beating the crap out of these guys. And it's not just the fact that it's this like really epic fight scene, it's the way they did it, and the way Matt's like body language through the whole thing, and the way he responds to injustice, and the way it's just like, it's incredible. They've created something really unique, and it's unlike any other Marvel experience, because I think this show stands alone as a great TV show without being attached to the Marvel name. And they did create something last season that only Mr. Robot and shows like that have created in the first season, which is anticipation, relationships that you believe in, and a storyline you want more of. And I'm excited to see what they do with it, because I think they have something really special with this new universe they're creating within the Netflix world. The Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, all of these people they're introducing, and Elektra, which I haven't gotten to yet. It's exciting. It's really unique, and I'm excited about the show, man. I'm hooked on it, and for all the reasons you said, and for making New York feel small and for making it feel personal. It's really cool, really cool.
What you said about New York being small and personal, I think that's the best part of New York, is when you're in like this pocket, and it's weird because New York is so big, but a lot of the people who are there have like, one of the lines Matt has is he's never been farther north than like 116th Street. And I think it's interesting because even though New York is so big, I think the best part of it is when you have these pockets of friends. And I think that's what Daredevil and shows like Master of None, and even though Mr. Robot doesn't really have friends, it does this weird, it makes New York small and personal, like you talked about. And I think the way that, and you'll see this as the show continues, the depth that they give to the Punisher as far as like kind of tragic, And obviously he's crazy at the same time, but the depth they give to his character is one of the most just artful expressions of human emotion that I've ever seen in a show. And it's weird because when I first saw they were casting Shane, or I honestly don't know the actor's name, but Shane from The Walking Dead as the Punisher, I was excited because I haven't really seen him in much, but I was also excited because I loved the character Shane in The Walking Dead, and the way that he acts as the Punisher is the same in a lot of ways, but the way the story ebbs and flows, it feels like you could literally take his character depth from the second season. And it's weird because as far as screen time, there's three other characters who get a lot of screen time, obviously Matt Murdock, Elektra, Karen, and there's these individual storylines that develop in season 2 that feel as if they've been developed over 6 seasons of TV. And by the end of the second season, you care about these characters like you've spent years with them. And the way they do it is just unbelievable. And we could talk about the show all day, but do you have any last thoughts on Daredevil before we move on?
Well, along with what you were talking about, it is cool how they took, because like Punisher has always felt to me like a really like two-dimensional character. Like he doesn't have much life to him. He's just a guy who goes around killing for justice. And but they've like added depth, and I'm excited to see how they continue to develop that. But you're right. And we talked about, I was thinking about this on the way over, like what the superhero shows I like the most, or the movies and all of that I like the most, are the Batman films, then Christopher Nolan ones, especially Dark Knight and the third one, and the first. I liked all three of them. What am I saying? And then this Daredevil show. And I wish that they would do Spider-Man like the way they've done Daredevil, because these are tragic characters and they're human characters, and like those three specifically are like the most human superheroes we have. And I think that that's what I like, is that like Batman bled, Batman limped, Batman needed to be bandaged up, and they showed that in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, that he needed help. And we're seeing that with Daredevil. Like there are times when, he gets shot, like he gets beat up, he gets hit with hammers, he gets hit with wrenches, like the dude gets cut up in the first season. It's just, it's interesting, and I think it's more compelling to see somebody that limps. Because like there's nothing compelling about Superman, because while he may be weakened by kryptonite, he's never going to be defeated, and all it takes for him is to fly up and shoot his laser beams out of his eyes, and you have to create like a 72-foot tall giant to defeat Superman, because that's the only thing that feels bigger than him. But with Matt, even though they've made New York small, everything feels bigger, and so that's why it feels like anything feels like this looming darkness hanging over the story, and it's like it builds anticipation, because they could literally bring anything into the story, because everything, like I said, feels bigger than the hero. And so I think that that's what's so interesting about it.
And kind of, putting a bow on it, there is a place for the Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans one-liners back and forth, and I think we're both excited for that in Captain America Civil War. But it's really nice to feel engrossed, and I think the best thing about the one-liners between those two is that it's a 2-hour experience. Daredevil is, it's 1-hour episodes it's a 13-hour experience, and I think 13 hours of Daredevil is way better than 13 hours of Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans one-liners, even though, again, we like that. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was something that we discussed, the Fear of the Walking Dead, a little bit in our podcast last week, or a couple weeks ago, but we want to just do a couple moments on it. And I'll go ahead and go first, and we've only watched the first episode, and this podcast is going to come out after the second episode, so maybe they'll redeem it, but I don't think they will. Let me just say this. I'm going to keep watching because I like zombies and I like Los Angeles and I like the actors, so I'll keep watching. But what they've done with the storyline, and coming into the first episode of the second season with napalm going down on California, they just skipped like all this stuff that I hoped the show would be again. And one of our fears that we talked about before the first episode came out was that this was going to be like an NCIS type thing, to where they were just going to do a West Coast version of The Walking Dead. And literally within 10 minutes of the first episode, they're already on a boat, they're already fighting off other groups, seemingly, even though it's psychological at this point, and it'll actually manifest itself into physical battle when that other boat comes and finds them or whatever. But they've already passed up all the opportunities that we hoped the show would become. And again, maybe they'll figure out some way to redeem it and they'll still show us how it developed, but it's basically a West Coast version of The Walking Dead at this point.
from the moment the show started, I was confused. And I had no idea what was happening. Why were they getting on the boat? Why were they leaving? Why was napalm dropped on LA? They didn't explain any of that. And it's because, like we talked about, they've put powerless people as the main characters. They don't know anything. That's so not compelling. And so now, like you said, okay, so we have the fight scene on the beach, which was already confusing. Like, the kid is sitting there crying about his mom. And now there's fire on all these random places on the beach, which made no sense. Did they go around and light bonfires on 7 different parts of the beach? Did I miss that part? Sorry, I'm ranting about specifics, but to me, from the moment it started, I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. It was disorienting. And then they get on the boat and they still don't explain anything. And then they fall right back into it. Oh, there's another group. We should help them. One person endangers themselves, almost gets eaten by a zombie. Then they save him. And then what else is there? A human group of people who are manipulating people and probably coming to kill them. Oh, that's new. That's never happened. Actually, that's what the last 3 seasons of The Walking Dead has been. So yeah, I'm frustrated with it. It had a lot of potential. It skipped all the good stuff. It isn't giving us enough information. There's no detail. It seems like there's no thought or direction put into this. Because now, what's the story here? What's the journey? Because this guy who's leading them is obviously deceiving them. You don't know what's up with him, but he seems like a villain. There's people chasing them now, but they haven't created a villain. They haven't created a journey or a destination. And so there's nothing anymore. Now you have to, maybe they'll create one. We are obviously going off of 1 episode of season 2, but it really feels like they totally screwed up the LA thing. LA is now no longer an option. They can't go back to LA. So it's like, what, are they going to do this on Hawaii now? Or where are they going? So it's a frustrating thing. We don't have to spend too much more time on it, but that's my take as well. I was confused, frustrated, and to me, all the story has been evaporated by the writing to this point.
Yeah, I'm completely with you, and I don't really have anything else to say about it, but I hope they figure out some way to make it interesting and different from The Walking Dead, because we've talked about this before, but The Walking Dead, we like it for what it is, and, we'd like some a little bit of change here and there, but when it's a completely different TV show, we'd like it to be different from the other TV show. And if they kept it within the Walking Dead universe and all of a sudden they decided they were going to journey to LA, whatever, then make it the same experience. But if you're going to give it a whole new title, all different characters, make it a different show. Don't make it the exact same thing in a different environment. And we've talked about all that. It's just NCIS at this point. So we're going to finish up with, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's like they keep doing this to themselves, and maybe it's because of the world they've created, but all they can do well is chaos. And to me, that's not a compelling enough reason to watch a show. And so, for you, what's the best case scenario for Fear the Walking Dead? We don't have to spend much time, but just for you, what's the best case at this point?
And I don't really know how they would go back to this, but the best case scenario was, like you said, creating a villain and a destination. The villain should have been the government. That should have been the villain of this season. And
they started to do that. So anyways, keep going. Sorry. They started to create that.
They totally did with the detention camps and some of the stuff with the cops killing random people. Spend 5 seasons on all of that. Develop characters within the entire that city of it slowly developing. I don't care whether you do it like a 24 style. Obviously not actually like 24, but spend 1 season being on one day. Have different things happen within different environments and give the characters more than just running and fighting from zombies. Maybe the zombies are actually, yes, the zombies can be a smaller part of this show. The show can be about how it developed, how the government handled it, and how the private citizens can be the hero of the show without obviously making it too, heroistic, but we can root for them and make the government the people who are struggling with morality, make the government the people who are struggling with being selfish. That's how you save the show, but I don't know if it's too late for that, frankly.
I think you nailed it. I'm 100% with you.
So moving on to some more positive things, we're going to talk about 3 movies that we are excited for. The first one, Captain America Civil War, comes out 2 days before my birthday, and I'm very excited for that. There's a couple reasons I'm excited for Civil War, and then I'll let you talk about it a little bit. One of the main reasons I'm excited for it is that it's going to be the introduction to some more characters. We're going to get to see Ant-Man again, even though I'm I'm pretty sure there was a spoiler where the action set they released is that this character isn't actually Ant-Man, he's some other guy, but I'm too nerdy to get into that. I'm not nerdy enough, to really, read up on the comic books and get into that. But I'm excited for it because Robert Downey Jr. is like, I can totally handle him as Iron Man, once a year or once every other year repeatedly, because he's funny, and whether it's stupid or not that I laugh at his one-liners, he's just a naturally engaging guy. I like most of the actors in this show, and the fact that I haven't read some of the critics' reviews, but I've seen 10 million posts about the critics are loving Captain America: Civil War, and I'm interested to watch it to see why, in almost like try to figure out why critics are loving it rather than why I love it, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it. But I think it's interesting that critics are giving something that this is like, we've run this back multiple times now with Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. So why are critics loving it? Because if it was the exact same style as some of the previous stuff, I feel like critics would be trashing it. So I'm interested to see, because I'm expecting that they're doing something a little bit different. And even if they don't do anything different, and even if it's just 2.5 hours of fighting, one-liners, and story development, I will be interested in this more than I will be interested in Batman versus Superman, because I don't think they're going to try to be extremely dark in this. Yes, it's superhero versus superhero, but I still feel like they're going to make it funny, and it's going to be engaging, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. And I think we talk about Marvel a lot on this podcast when we do entertainment, and it's because the show is there, the movies are out there all the time. And the thing that I guess we talked about, stay in your lane, Marvel, stay in your lane, and this is the movie where they can really dive into the depth of the characters. The movies, my thing was like, when you do an Avengers movie which by the way is well cast, I think that they nailed it on all the people that have, like Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk is great, Robert Downey Jr. is great, Chris Evans is great, like all these characters are exactly who they need to be. But don't spend time, don't try to fool me into thinking that the Avengers is about character development. It's not. It's about making action figures and making a bigger franchise. And so this movie it has the opportunity to be more than that, or be different than that. And so that's what's exciting. I'm excited to see Spider-Man. I'm excited to see all of these new characters they're bringing in. Well, like you said, I love Robert Downey Jr. I love him as Iron Man, and Chris Evans is the perfect anti-Robert Downey Jr. as Captain America, self-serious and corporate, and but I think that this is exciting because it looks like they're doing what Batman vs Superman was supposed to be. It looks like they're doing it better. It doesn't look like it's self-serious. It doesn't look. It just looks real in a way. You can see. Even in the preview, you could see the struggle, and maybe it's because we like the characters, we've gotten to know them better. Maybe we haven't gotten to know Superman and Batman, and they don't know each other. But in this world, these guys know each other, and you could sense the emotional stress that they're experiencing having to fight each other. So I think that's what makes it more compelling. In my mind, at least, is that it actually looks like it's going to be deep with that kind of stuff. Obviously I want the action, I want everything else, but you want to see relationships that are believable in movies and in stories, because that's what makes it when something happens, you feel the emotion of the movie when it wants you to feel it. And so it looked to me, at least in the previews, and if critics are raving about it, then maybe it's true that they have nailed it from that aspect, that you're creating an emotional moment for the viewer that they can actually sink their teeth into. Exactly.
You actually care that Captain America and Iron Man are against each other. And I know a little bit more about the comic background of this than I do the Batman versus Superman thing. It's more of an ideological pull of, superheroes should have more restraint. No, they shouldn't. And like you said, we actually care about them because we've seen them be friends, even though they have differing worldviews on certain things. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting. And even if they don't, go deep into, because I think character development can be skewed in ways that a lot of people think character development is, we want to know more about their past. No. I don't really care about Captain America's, because we've seen that. We've seen the same thing with Iron Man. We want to see how their relationship kind of, pulls and tugs throughout this movie. And, thank you. I can't remember who the director of this movie is, but thank you for not spoiling that they're going to be friends at the end of the movie like freaking Batman versus Superman did. And that's why I'm spending money to go see this movie in theaters the night it comes out. And that's why I'm not spending money to see Batman versus Superman in theaters, was because I know how the freaking movie ends. And that's not entertaining. I don't want to pay money to go see that. So Do you have any last thoughts on Civil War before we moved on to Doctor Strange?
Nope.
Okay. So before we did this, I just showed Nathan the trailer for Doctor Strange. I watched it the morning it came out. I believe it was Thursday of last week. And I'm excited for this. Again, another Marvel movie, but it's another Marvel movie in terms of they're taking a different angle. It's going to be like its own individual story. And I don't know if Doctor Strange is going to be linked into with the rest of the characters in the next Avengers movie. If he is, whatever. Like we've talked about, the Avengers movies are basically Ocean's 11. It's this ensemble of characters. We want to see them be kind of funny. We want to see all of them, flex their muscles. And we don't need any character depth from that. We don't need to see, we don't need to learn to care about the characters in those movies. We need to learn to care about the characters in their own movies, like we did with Iron Man and like we did with Captain America, like we did with Thor, like we did with Hulk, etc., etc. And so Doctor Strange, which comes out, I believe, in November of this year, is starring Benedict Cumberbatch, or Batch, or however you say his name. And I'm excited for this purely because I literally know zero about Doctor Strange in terms of the comics. So I'm starting with a fresh, clean slate. So when the trailer came out, I had no idea what this movie was about other than Benedict was, the star. And as soon as I heard he was the star, I was like, all right, I'm in. And maybe it's because I give him credit in terms of, I don't think the dude would be in a Marvel movie because that's so anti Benedict Cumberbatch in my view of him, that as soon as it was announced he was taking the role, I was like, okay, they probably have something here with this script and the way they're going to do this movie. And the trailer just backed that up. They showed us some stuff. It literally just looks like Inception, but with Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange and a Marvel twist on it. So I'm all in for all those reasons. And it looks interesting just because I hope they don't reveal too much, because I think there's a lot of mystery with this movie, because Doctor Strange isn't something that the common superhero fan knows about. It's someone who, reads the comic books would know about. But for the everyday man, we don't know him like, Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Captain America. So they can really, reveal a sense of mystery with this going into it. And they did a great job of that, in my opinion, with the first trailer. And I hope that continues until the movie actually comes out.
Yeah, I think you summed that up well. I don't have a whole lot to add to that. The preview looks awesome. Check it out if you want to learn more about the movie, because I really didn't know much about Doctor Strange. I had heard people talk about that movie was coming out. I followed the comics some when I was younger, but mostly never deep enough to be like a comic book guy. So I don't really know about Doctor Strange. And Benedict Cumberbatch is one of those guys that when you see that he's going to be in the movie, you automatically give it a pass. You're automatically that's going to be worth seeing. Even if you could literally put him in any movie. He was in Zoolander 2 and he made the movie 10% better for the 30 minutes total that he was on the screen. Probably not even the 5 minutes total that he was on the screen. He gave it a boost because he's just phenomenal. He's so good at what he does. So yeah, I'm excited to see more about that movie and to see it when it comes out in November. But to wrap up our nerddom here, we saw was it this week or last week that it came out?
I believe it was, I can't remember, but the Rogue One teaser trailer came out.
Yeah, it did.
And it was kind of funny. They released the teaser to the teaser the day before on their Instagram account. And then they actually released the trailer. And, we knew who was going to be in this movie. We knew kind of what it was going to be about, that it was going to be an isolated story. And what it remains to be seen, and I'm sure they're leaving this door open for a purpose, as to whether they're going to link this to the main universe. And whether they do or not is whatever, because I kind of trust Lucasfilm now that George isn't at the lead anymore in terms of how they're going to develop these movies and stuff. But this trailer was just absolutely unbelievable. And from the director down to the lead actress, I'm excited that they're having another female protagonist as the main lead. I'm excited that there's, again, diversity in a Star Wars movie, and that it's not forced diversity. These characters actually look like they fit in their roles. And even though Forrest Whitaker's in it, and I was skeptical of that, and I still am a little bit, it seems like his character is going to be really cool. And I'm just excited for a Star Wars movie that is purely about an isolated story that doesn't have to be linked to the previous movies like The Force Awakens did, even though it did a great job. And, whatever, it's a trilogy, it has to link together. But this movie doesn't have to do anything other than tell a story that we have no idea. They had a clean slate with this as to who stole the Death Star plans, how the rebels got it, and that was a huge gap, and rightly so. Star Wars does a great job of making the world feel big, and I think this movie's even though it's zooming in on an aspect that we didn't know about before, I think it has the opportunity to, even though tell a story, it's going to keep the world big. Whether it's, it's the scenes we saw in this movie did such a good job of making Star Wars feel big, even in an isolated trailer, that I have full confidence that the movie is going to continue to make the Star Wars universe massive while allowing us to zoom in on this microscopic story and give us some detail that we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, Star Wars did the opposite. I think it's fair to say they did the opposite of what The Walking Dead has done, and that they've left themselves seemingly like hundreds or dozens, whatever number you want to use, of avenues for, as the guys on the watch would call it, delicious IP. Whatever that means, I don't even know. But they leave themselves room for more. There's always room for more, and it doesn't feel forced. Like, this feels like a story that everybody's probably wondered, like, how'd they get the planets to the Death Star? And I've never put like deep thought into it, but it's something that, in the same way that like Fargo mentions in season 1, the dad, Lou, says, this reminds me of this situation, and he kind of like tells a 30-second story, not even. He just kind of mentions it, and like maybe in your head you're like, oh, I wonder what that was like, but you don't think about it. And then in the second season they take that thought and they tell a story, and that kind of, to me, is like in season 4 they say, or not season 4, episode 4 of Star Wars, they say, we stole the planet from the Death Star. And so it's like, how did that happen? You don't really think about that in the moment, but now they're creating this movie off of it that opens the door for tons of prequels, and even you can, if they want to link this to the other story, tell more stories off of this story to continuously link it to the main story, which I'm okay whatever they do, because in my mind that first new movie they made buys a lot of equity for me with what they're going to do, because they've proven they can introduce new characters. I think they're done paying homage to the old, and now they are creating something completely new. And that's what this movie is going to continue to do, is to say, yes, you're going to see Han Solo, but we're done with Harrison Ford. We're done with Mark Hamill. Like, we're moving on to new characters. And so that's, to me, is so cool. I'm excited. And just like, to me, as a standalone movie, it just looks like an awesome sci-fi heist movie. Like, it just looks cool. Like, who doesn't want to see an ensemble heist movie with people who just seem cool? And like, even the beginning of the trailer was like, why are you doing what you're doing? And she goes, well, this is a rebellion. I rebel. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, the nerd in me came out really quickly, because it's like, this is going to be awesome. So it's an exciting thing to see what Lucasfilm is doing, what Star Wars is going to become. I'm just excited about it.
The illustration you gave with Fargo was brilliant, because that's taking it out of the Star Wars universe and giving it context. But an example in the Star Wars universe that does exactly what you're talking about is obviously the Death Star plans, where they talked about that. But also, I think the quintessential scene in Star Wars to where they tell these stories, or just, whether it's over 30 seconds, and then there's like 6 individual different stories within that, was when in episode 4, and this is deep diving, I'm sorry, but when Obi-Wan gives Luke, the lightsaber for the first time, and he mentions that it was his father's, and he says 6 or 7, he talks about the Clone Wars, yep. And he talks about his father's trade and what he did to what he just, and there were a few other things that I can't pull off the top of my head, but he mentioned 4 or 5 different things that you were just like, oh my gosh, and your mind starts kind of spinning for a little bit, but then obviously you get back into the movie and you don't really think about it too much, and obviously they kind of screwed up the Clone Wars movies, but what that does is it makes Star Wars feel so big, and it's why so many people are so engrossed in this universe, is that, like you said, this movie looks like kind of like a heist or like a Saving Private Ryan or some kind of weird, exciting action movie, but it's just happening within a Star Wars context, which is exactly what Star Wars fans have always wanted. We've, even though we like the remaining, and I'm engrossing in the entire Star Wars fan population into myself here by saying we like the way that the trilogy goes in explaining the main characters, but we just like literally we give any smart director the keys to the car in a Star Wars story and place it in the Star Wars universe, and I'll pay $12 to go see it the first time. If it's good enough, see it a second time, and then pay $20 to buy it on DVD, which I literally do with nothing. I rarely do that with a movie, but put it in that Star Wars universe, and if a good director does it and has good actors and pulls it off, I'll give you $40.
That's a good point. I mean, it is the first movie that I've thought of like that. I saw it twice in theaters, and then when it came out on DVD, I was like, I want to buy this. And like I rented it on Redbox already, and I'm probably going to buy it eventually. And it has created anticipation. I think you're right. Like you create this universe, and if you just do something that people love well, like a heist movie, Saving Private Ryan, like war movie, whatever it is, if you do it well in a universe that people already love, you're gonna make money off of it, and we're gonna appreciate it. Like, and like I think about who wouldn't want to see a similar kind of movie in like the Lord of the Rings universe. You know, like how cool would that be to do like a heist kind of movie in that? So I just think if you have what they have, which is this massive universe that is completely unexplored, and there are stories that have been mentioned here and there within the film that you can play off of, like they have left themselves wide open to explore this for the next 20 years, and that's exciting. That's really exciting. So yeah, I'm all in.
I'm right there with you. Do you have any last entertainment thoughts or nuggets you want to throw in there before we head out?
No, I think I'm good. I am going to start OJ versus the People soon, so I can catch up with the rest of the world.
It's the other way around. It's the People versus OJ.
Yikes. Yep, that's how out of it I am. I feel like a dad right now. Am I watching Blacklist right now? Anyways, I'm going to pick up on that show. I want to give a quick shout out to Mom for giving me a haircut. Haven't had to pay for a haircut in my life, so shout out to Mom. Shout out to Vita Coco, coconut water. Keeps me hydrated naturally. And shout out to our sponsor, the Mobile Hop-In off of Arnold Mill and Trickham Road.
That was a beautiful sentimental outro, and I couldn't agree more. Subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud or whatever if you'd like, and then all the social media and our website unprofession.com gives you all of our podcasts, the stuff we write, and links to all of our social media pages if you want to keep up with us. So thank you for listening, and we will talk to you guys again soon.